the black screen becomes a night sky, as one by one, stars begin to poke through and come to life in the darkness. And radiating out of the darkness, a piccolo plays a transparent and unassuming melody, which leans into the sharpened fourth of the scale and begins with the perfect fifth. This shimmering and expectant music by John Williams is full of mystery and poses a simple question that will only be answered during the very final moments of Steven Spielberg's beautiful film. The prologue of E.T. establishes music as arguably the most important narrative tool in the film. What's remarkable about this opening 8-minute sequence is that not a single word of dialogue is spoken. Instead, the emotional arc, and by extension the 3-act structure of the prologue, is guided almost entirely by the music. E.T. begins as a sort of silent film, symphony or opera, where grand musical statements establish not only the emotional context to the film, like an overture for an opera does, but also begins to suggest the wider emotional themes that underpin the story. And in marking the importance of the score in this way, it makes us listen even more carefully to the cues, to the subtle alterations in melodies, and to the way the music lifts the narrative, both metaphorically and literally. This piccolo theme will become a recurring motif, acting in the opening to the film as a representation of the mysterious and unknown nature of E.T. But very quickly, this musical idea loses any sense of fear, and instead becomes the music of wonder and excitement. As E.T. tentatively follows Elliot into his room, the piccolo line that was so sparsely realised at the beginning of the film is now accompanied by warm, tonal harmony, played by tremolo strings on top of a new, gradually rising cant melody in horn and cello. E.T. starts to make himself at home in Elliot's room. And as he does, and as we and Elliot start to see him for the first time, we hear a soothing harp cadenza, which plays the friendship theme. This, like the opening piccolo melody, begins with a perfect fifth and marks out a line that seems strangely familiar. If we look at the contour of this melody, we find that it almost exactly matches the shape of the famous flying theme. This theme hasn't even been heard yet in the film, but elements of it are already starting to be introduced. Elliot tries to find out where E.T. is from, and we hear once again E.T.'s piccolo theme. This music is now becoming more associated with E.T.'s longing for his home and his people.
What's he doing?
And as he begins to try and explain where his home is, after a small crescendo, we hear the first nearly complete rendition of the flying theme. The model planets rise into the air, lifted by the music, but the melody is not quite as we'll come to know it later, and the harmony is not yet completely settled, with a weak first inversion in the bass to begin with, followed by a dissonant E-flat in the bass for the second phrase. This melody is developing, coming out of the piccolo notes and the harp cadenza that came before it, but it is not yet complete. This will only come when E.T. takes the first steps to returning home. As Elliot takes E.T. into the forest, we hear an undulating run of semiquavers in the strings. This is taken over by the piano as the music starts to accelerate with the bike, pushing Elliot along underneath a darting, fervent string and brass melody. And then, out of a sudden orchestral mixed E-flat A major chord, comes this. The music lifts E.T. up with a soaring, vast melody whose contours and harmonic language, with that glorious E major over D chord in the third bar, are taken from all the music that has come before it. This music feels like it's pushing the bike, Elliot, and E.T. higher. The middle section marks out the pulse in a more articulated and strident way, with a faster melodic line and more harmonic and rhythmical questions that are finally answered as we eventually return to the flying motif back into D major. And with a quick shift in direction, a cascading string line brings E.T. and Elliot down to the ground. Now this flying theme, more than anything, symbolizes the connection between the two. It symbolizes their friendship.
I'd be happy here. I could take care of you. I wouldn't let anybody hurt you. We could grow up together, E.T.
But with this new friendship comes a new fear. The fear of losing the ones you care about. As E.T. slowly loses the energy to keep on living, Williams brings back E.T.'s music as a sign of their connection, but also as a sign of something that's coming to an end, falling down gently to earth. But instead of being full of sadness at this point, the music feels full of hope, of the life and goodness that E.T. has given and continues to give to Elliot to keep him alive. After E.T. dies, Elliot goes to see his friend for the last time, and we hear in the score the friendship theme played on celeste, harp, and then clarinet. This music has now turned into a love theme, as Elliot realizes what E.T. has meant to him. But it can't end here. The force that brought Elliot back from the brink of death, that lifted a bike into the air, that connected these two in the first instance, the emotional force that we experience in the music, now brings E.T. back to life. The narrative and music are now set on an unstoppable path as Elliot and his brother escape with E.T. The musical ideas collide in a single movement symphony in this last chapter, which propels us to the final moments of the story. As Elliot joins his brother's friends, the music picks up a careering rhythmical motif in woodwind and percussion. On top of a fanfare-esque line in the trumpets, the victory fanfare. This continues and picks up pace as they are chased by the government officials. This is music of completely new energy and rhythm, with motifs calling out and answering to each other. The government motif, E.T.'s motif, the victory fanfare, the flying theme, all overlapping in this unrelenting incidental music. This takes us to the point where, once again, the music lifts E.T. into the air. Until, finally, a cascading line, this time played by sharp trumpets, brings them back down to earth. We have now reached the epilogue of this symphony, of this opera. E.T.'s return to home was inevitable, and so the music speaks of finality, but also of deep but bittersweet sadness. As E.T. and Elliot talk for the last time, we hear two interweaving and constantly rising string lines underneath a reassuring, earthy bass pedal note. The musical lines push and pull against each other, setting up a sort of call and answer between the two melodies, as Elliot tries to convince E.T. to stay. The harmony shifts higher, becoming even more chromatic and romantic, elevating and pushing the boundaries of the harmonic language as it expands and grows. The sequence returns in the strings, continuing again from where it left off. Elliot is beginning to realize that this is the end. The horns then pick up the love theme that began life as a simple theme about friendship, turning it into something warm and comforting. And eventually trumpets and horns sing out the ascending sequence of interlocking counter melodies. The music gradually intensifies and brightens, urged on by tremolo strings and rumbling percussion, and it lands eventually on a glorious F major chord for the completion of the emotional journey of the film. After a short version of E.T.'s piccolo theme, we hear a blazing rendition of the victory fanfare. E.T. is returning home. But he's leaving something of himself behind. As we breathlessly watch E.T. board his ship, we hear the middle section of the flying theme appearing out of the texture, leading to the final full rendition of the flying theme of E.T.'s melody, or more accurately, E.T. and Elliot's melody. It comes to a close with a sudden and abrupt end, and the piccolo line takes over, answering the musical question that was set up right at the beginning of the film. The music regains its energy with multiple renditions of E.T. and Elliot's theme, moving around the orchestra, lifting the ship into the air as it rises to a triumphant final fanfare. The questions have been answered. The journey is now complete. Fear has turned into friendship. Mystery has turned into wonder. Hatred has turned into love. Thank you so much for watching. This video is part of a fantastic new collaboration between a number of YouTubers called The Director Project, where each of us creates a video about a new director each month. There are some amazing videos all about Spielberg's films this month, and I thoroughly recommend you have a look at them. I've linked the playlist in the description below. Also, if you're a creator and you make a video about the director of the month, you can tweet the link to @ColdPopture to be considered for inclusion in the playlist. And do subscribe to my channel to keep up to date with all my new videos. See you next time.